data that is aggregated and anonymized properly and things like this is important. There's a lot of data that's generated, and the real value is to do discovery. It's pretty easy these days to do all kinds of AI, but it's pretty difficult to prove that you're practicing ethical AI. You can't just have a conversation and a day later everything is up and running. It's just not that simple. I see that being a bit like a huge step forward and really helping accelerate and really actually saving lives.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Devico Breakfast Bar. Here we speak with different people involved in the business landscape, share their expertise, delve into the latest tech trends, and explore the ins and outs of IT outsourcing. I'm Oleg Sadikov, and today I'm excited to have Jim Nasr, experienced technology executive and software architect, building innovative software for healthcare, CEO at Acoer. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. Hi Jim, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Oleg. Thank you for having me.
Could you start by telling us about yourself and your professional background?
Yeah, certainly. I am a technologist by profession. I studied computer science in college, and then over the course of a career, had a number of technology entrepreneurship roles and ran a business and grew it from inception to an exit. And then did it again with Acoer a number of years ago. And along the way, I've done, particularly the last 10 years or so, Oleg, a lot of work in the healthcare space. And really where I see myself and Acoer as a company right now is very much focused on innovations within healthcare and clinical research and a number of use cases in that medical arena. So that's really it in kind of a nutshell.
Thanks. Acoer is known for its focus on building blockchain-based software for healthcare. What inspired you to pursue the niche within the technology sector?
Yeah. I think, Oleg, many times when people, entrepreneurs in particular, get into the healthcare innovation space, they have a personal reason, and that was the case with myself, with my family members, my father specifically, taken ill and a lot of direct experiences seeing how things were broken down in health delivery, public health. And then at that time, this is in 2016 or so, I was at the CDC, at the Centers for Disease Control, hoping to basically modernize the scientific application portfolio and then really looking at how do we fix some underlying issues, such as information being blocked or siloed data where you really can't and don't communicate effectively, or it takes a lot of time and resources and money. And then also this area around accountability. These services cost a lot of money, but it's not just about money, it's about human life and human wellness. That is, as example, the CDC's mission. So it kind of got me thinking about, well, what are some ways we can look at technology that can help with this, and that's when we started with Ethereum back in the day and built our own nodes, and the whole concept really was, can we introduce more traceability, more accountability, more preemptive ways of showing compliance, making things more efficient and yet kind of cryptographically provable, right? And it turns out you can't do that. You can do all that stuff, not necessarily certainly with Ethereum at the time. You have to pick and choose your technology quite carefully and build it into your context of the solution. But that was the genesis of where everything started, and that's how it's continued.
Could you explain how blockchain technology enhances compatibility in healthcare systems?
Yeah, so in terms of interoperability in health, to be clear, the primary problem when it comes to interoperability is at the actual data level in healthcare, because the data is all over the place. For instance, patient data is not in one database or data lake, and many times it's in different formats, archaic old systems. Honestly, some systems that were built in the 70s and still are continue to be systems of record. So the first problem to solve really in terms of interoperability is at the data layer. And many of these systems that are used. They're what's called validated systems. Of course, security and privacy preservation, compliance, these are like very important things. So where does blockchain fit into this? I think, again, to be clear, we don't advocate nor do we put patient records on the blockchain. That's not appropriate. There's all kinds of reasons, technology reasons, usability reasons, as well as legal reasons why that's not a good idea. However, what you can do is have privacy preserving references, like encrypted references of patient information or like aggregated, if you like, clinical data sets and things like this, reference on a public blockchain. And that actually does move the needle. And that's the way we work. I'll give you a simple example. So in clinical research, it's very important that researchers do collaborate, because otherwise you have a lot of wasted effort, a lot of money spent, redundant projects and research that really goes nowhere. It doesn't help anyone. So having data that can be shared in an accountable way, data that is aggregated and anonymized properly and things like this is important. And one of the kind of ways we've seen with, in terms of this interoperability, if you like, idea, is if, as example, we use a non-fungible token, again, not a board mic, just the idea of a non-fungible token, and index unique data sets. But data sets are used for instance, for cancer research, or look at eye scan data, or any inflammation data. There's all kinds of use cases, diabetes, and reference those uniquely with an NFT on a public ledger. And then provide some indexing that is privacy preserved, but yet provides ability for you to do some AI and discovery at that level. That significantly moves the needle forward in terms of being able to interoperate, if you like, at the information level and then reference the underlying data. So that's just an example, but yeah, it's not a straightforward interoperability play. Just because you have a blockchain, it doesn't mean that you're going to make health data more interoperable. There's more nuance to it.
How do you see the future of blockchain, evolving blockchain technology?
That's a good question. I'm going to just speak for Acoer and what we're doing, not necessarily everything, though some of it may be projected, at a large level. So what we see really is two things, Oleg. The first thing is this, and I think this is something that's largely recognized these days, not just in healthcare, but I think in many industries. And that is that as data is growing and we all have so much new data that's generated, and not just conventional, in our world, clinical data, but all kinds of other data that's interesting, such as from wearables or what's called real world evidence, or patient generated data, or genomic sequencing data, you name it. There's a lot of data that's generated. The real value is to do discovery. And not just to collect the data, but to actually understand more about it, have analytics, do AI, things like this. But one of the side effects of all this data, is that people over the last decade or so in particular have been moving this data into the cloud to then do something useful with it, to do intelligence. If that's your strategy as the data grows, that's a very, very unsustainable strategy, economically speaking. It just costs a lot of money. I'll give you an example. We're working with building some large language models around data discovery and meta-analysis for cancer research and cold therapy. Well, if we took all of our data and put it on one, like Amazon or whatever public cloud instance, it would just cost us an enormous amount of money. And one way where we think blockchain will come in is this idea that you have the data remain decentralized in their existing, like for instance, lab systems. Most systems these days have, almost all of them have internet capability, or there's APIs that you can use. But instead of moving the data centrally everywhere and just creating that cost, not to mention the DevOps impact, and also frankly going from validated systems to systems that now need to be revalidated, why don't you have some of the data remain decentralized and then use blockchain and DLT innovation to basically, using this idea of data stamping, cryptographic authenticity, provenance, consent tracking, that way provide the control and do what's called, this is what we're building, data meshing and federated searches across different kinds of data sources without centralizing them. That's one that we see has tremendous potential, if for no other reason that you're saving money. And that is a very important thing. And certainly in the world of healthcare, every time you go from a validated system to something that's new, you're going to have to go through the full revalidation of the system, ensuring and improving that it's secure, that you're privacy preserving, and all these things that are critical for compliance. The second use case, and I kind of briefly mentioned this, in passing, is really all to do with AI. So I think all of us know these days that AI is really here, is going to stay. I think most of us are understanding the impact to our own businesses and things that we do, whether as a consumer with like ChatGPT or something, or whether it's business. But then in the health world, particularly clinical research and patient engagement, the big issue is, are you doing ethical AI practices? Are you able to prove what the original source of the data was, or the consent of a patient? And then as data very quickly gets regenerated or derivatives through AI, can you be able to prove that the data hasn't gone, or the results are not based on rogue data? And that's a very, very difficult problem. It's pretty easy these days to do all kinds of AI, but it's pretty difficult to prove that you're practicing ethical AI. So again, we think that pervasive and real-time data stamping and use of DLT is part of the solution here. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely part of the solution. And of course, that requires, Oleg, as you can imagine, that whatever you're doing, whatever underlying DLT you're using is fast enough, can scale the right levels, is cheap, its pricing is not variable, because end of the day, you can't do these things with no understanding of practical and economic impact. So anyway, those are the two use cases: lowering kind of costs of centralized data in healthcare, as well as kind of preemptively enabling or proving ethical AI.
Thanks for the response. What's your opinion on AI? I think you can agree that there is too much fake around AI right now. If I'm taking any startup or whatever, it's in many cases it's just the name AI and that's it. The value that it brings has nothing to do with AI in reality. What's your opinion? What will be in the future, let's say in 1-2 years? Will it stay the same?
You raise a very good question. I think you're right. Right now, yeah, of course, there's some useful things, but much of what's happening with, I think, consumer facing AI is really, if you like, assisting with public information, but much of that public information, or a lot of it, is available in other places. And also you can get into the question of data hallucination or AI hallucination, and whether or not the data really is being retrieved ethically, or you have the rights for doing it. There's all kinds of issues around this. I think what I see, though, and certainly in the world of healthcare and clinical research, is that there will be, and there already is, but not very at scale yet, but there will be movement towards effectively private data or semi-private insight development, and like meta-analysis discovery, and question, kind of like, for instance, for certain kinds of clinical decisions, kind of question discovery and things like this. That I see being very, very helpful. I think in order to get there, though, it's not just establish like public data sets, right? Things that are out there, right? And typically tend to be dated. We have to have access and work with AI experts who contextually understand, for instance, cancer research, and working with oncologists and physicians in that space to basically expose private and semi-private data, or mesh public data, for instance, data from clinicaltrials.gov or PubMed, with corresponding non-published or work in progress clinical data. I see that being a bit like a huge step forward, and really helping accelerate options for treatment, possibly new drug discoveries, and really actually saving lives. So I just don't think it's happening right now. I think we have some ways to go. When it comes to healthcare and AI, I think we need to have a lot more innovation, and kind of really innovative people in different areas working together. It's not just about like the AI team, or just about the scientists, or tech people like us. I think you have to bring this diverse group together and have them work effectively. And those are not easy things to do.
How do you attract tech talents who are passionate about blockchain, and what qualities do you look for in potential team members? That's especially relevant since we're talking about blockchain based software for healthcare, which a kind of unique niche, at least for me.
It's not easy, right? But I don't think it's easy in general to find strong talent, especially for companies like us, where we're small, but we have a very specific identity, and we need to find people who really get all that, understand, are excited by being in a startup, and doing innovative kind of work, but also understand our mission and what we're trying to do, and are excited by, for instance, innovation, healthcare, and things like this. I would say to answer your question, I think first and foremost, or like what we look for is people who are very, very strong fits with the culture of our company and the core values we have. That sounds a little bit cliche, I realize that, but it's really important. It's one of the things that I think separates people who do interesting things or want to do interesting things versus people who wind up doing those things and keep on doing those things. I think it's really important to have culture that you can impute to everyone and keep it sustainable and keep it at the front of people's minds. Not easy. So we look for people who like a really versatile technical background, who want to innovate, who maybe take some risks in areas. It is new. I mean, not many people, like you were saying, are doing blockchain healthcare kind of solutions. It is kind of niche if you look at it in that way. So that kind of background. I think technically speaking, a lot of our work is based on open source technologies. So, we do largely Java on the back end, some Python, and on the front end is a lot of the JavaScript, React, Google Material type of things that we have built with our own technologies. So we look for people who have expertise in those areas and are proven. But then beyond just the technical skills is provability of building secure by design code, building testable by design code, building scalable by design code. These are kind of like really important things that we do, and it's very much part of our culture. So we look for people who have done that and can demonstrate doing it. And then having done all that stuff, then obviously we love to have people who have native blockchain, particularly Hedera experience, since that's the technology that we use the most. But there are not that many of them. So we're really willing to work with and grow our employees in these skills. But it requires them to have a certain kind of personality and a long-term commitment to these long-term ideas. Whether or not, honestly, I think what we're doing on the surface seems niche, that is healthcare and blockchain. But I think in reality, what we're really trying to do is bake in blockchain as part of our tech stack. We're abstracting blockchain. It works as if you're using MongoDB or you're doing Kubernetes at that level, as opposed to making a very explicit case that you're having a Web3 experience and you have to have a specific kind of wallet and a specific kind of like a crypto and things like that. That's not the way we think about it. We think of it very much as how do we build a kind of a sustainable tech stack of cryptographic proofing. It's a little bit different maybe to some other companies doing blockchain work.
You said you're a small team. How many developers do you have? And what's basically the configuration of your tech team?
Yeah, I think we're about 10 or so and growing. We also have some kind of like one or two kind of key partners that we have worked with and continue to work with, particularly when it comes to extending our base products to like new clients or doing one-time development. So that's an area where I know that you're certainly interested in this, and your audience as well, where we possibly look into partnerships with outsourcing teams and try to build long-term relationships that hopefully can help deliver these kind of projects. When it comes to our core products engineering, that team has been around for quite some time, and it's a very steep learning curve to get to be effective with our own kind of engineering teams, the internal product teams. That requires a lot more of a longer term commitment of whether it's new employees or anybody we work with. And then it's just not that easy. There's a lot of new concepts, and you have to have a pretty good understanding of the contextual things we're doing around kind of like a research or HIPAA compliance and all these other things. But yeah, that's basically kind of our approach. And we're really kind of, I would say we're very much a decentralized team. We have engineers around the world, and we're very, very comfortable doing that. Of course, we build our code in I think most modern kind of way that you would expect for this. We have microservices development and serverless APIs, and when we're able to, we have a full CI/CD and deploy code very quickly into multiple public infrastructure and different nodes that we have. And so it's quite a sophisticated, we say, modern development structure, and the team is decentralized.
On our intro call, you mentioned that you had a negative experience with IT outsourcing. Would you be willing to elaborate on what went wrong and the lessons you learned from that experience?
Not to say that every experience wasn't great, but I would say that, we have had outsourcing and it hasn't worked out to our high qualities. It's been a situation where, from our perspective, we wanted and needed a commitment to really understand both our technology and the context of what we wanted to do, and also, frankly, the high qualities that we're expecting and have with our other products and things we're doing. But there was a mismatch between that and motivations of our, of people that maybe worked, where I think maybe to them it was considered, more like a gig or more like just a one-off kind of project. To us, that continuity is very important, because then it's a very, very costly experience to have a relationship, do something for a couple of months and then, have to do it again and again. That's not a very efficient way of doing business. So I think that's been one part of the experience. I think another part really has been, to be honest, around just pure logistics. For instance, we did one big project a few years ago, just in the middle of COVID, actually, and we had a very, very big team. But we learned that there are certain time zones, certain logistics, and certain abilities to communicate that really, under duress, under pressure to deliver it, it just doesn't work that well. So I think that's just being real with yourself on how your team can adapt, or what can work, what doesn't work, time zones, just being realistic. I think that's just one of the things that we have learned. As an example, it's very, very, very difficult, I would say, for us to manage a whole relationship where there's very little like real time communication windows, or it's tiny. It's like 1 hour a day. That's just not a very good scenario. And I think those are the kind of things which we have learned and we will avoid.
Did that negative experience with IT outsourcing lead to any changes in your company's internal IT capabilities or resource allocation strategies?
No doubt. When it comes to our own product engineering, we're very much about kind of growing the team internally, making the investments to bring in talented people, but then giving them time to learn what we're doing. We have quite a rigorous product development protocol, and lots of things that we have on, kind of typical tools that they would use, like Confluence and Jira and Slack, and we have OKRs for measuring performance and accountability and all. So obviously it's an investment. It's an investment to bring in new people and have them learn all of that and be up to speed, and on top of it learn specific things that we're doing, and some of the blockchain things that are a little bit new to them, etc. But that's been really kind of what we've done. We do maintain some relationships with the external parties that we have worked with over the course of years, but then again, it's been a mutual investment. Just whether it's been around, for instance, just delivery or configuration of some of our products, or some AI work, or even medical experts, where we're not a medical company, we're a technology company, but we work, quite consistently with the public health experts and physicians, oncologists, etc. So all of that has been part of it, is, maintaining those kind of networks and direct, if you like, partners. But that requires real intention. It's not opportunistic. Like, you can't just have a conversation and a day later everything is up and running. It's just not that simple.
In the context of your industry, do you believe there are viable alternatives to IT outsourcing that offer similar benefits without the risks or issues you mentioned?
There are degrees of de-risking things for everyone. I don't know if you can remove risk entirely. I think that's, if you take no risk, you're going to get no reward. I don't know if it's completely making things riskless. It's just kind of like being very measured about what is it that you're making risks on and what's the payoff on it. So I would say alternatives, really what we have and what we tend to do, find companies that are similar to us, both in terms of size, but also, frankly, in terms of motivation and credibility, right? Because, and I get this often, I don't know how many daily requests I get from various staffing firms. I mean, I would say many, many daily. So, probably into the hundreds, by in a month or more. We like to work with people that we can know the CEO, as example, directly. Like, I would have direct relationship and direct communication with that person, and then really understand their kind of key motivations longer term and their key commitments longer term, and see if we can match that. What we have found is that when we have companies of that syncing, or just that kind of similarity to us, with the same kind of hunger to innovate or do what they're doing, then it's a better fit. It's a much better fit when it comes to partnerships, because we all have like a skin in the game. What doesn't work for us at Acoer, is, having a relationship with, let's say, a giant system integrator being managed through some set of intermediaries and things like this. That is not a model that we have seen work. So therefore, we try to, if not so much of an alternative, but seek out, and find ways, maybe through like a project or small project, to build like much more sustainable relationships with one or two key partners in this area.
As we wrap up our conversation, what advice would you offer to other executives who are considering IT outsourcing for their organizations, especially those who may vary due to negative experiences like yours?
Sure. I would say, in every case, keep an open mind, because there are some great companies around, and I would say around the world, right? I think that the kind of work that we do, like I mentioned, is already decentralized, is already global. We have clients everywhere and doing work, in very many different places. So I think being open-minded is definitely kind of important. My advice to an executive who's dealing with a similar kind of business, but where the contextual understanding of the business is important, like for instance, understanding clinical research, is to seek out people who are proven, very specifically proven in the area. Or as example, we talked about this at the beginning of our conversation, like if we're talking about healthcare interoperability, there are some standards around healthcare interoperability. This technology called FHIR, which is fast healthcare interoperability resources. Or I was mentioning open source. I think it's really important that the people that you're considering or building relationships with actually have proven experience specifically in those areas, because if they don't, it's going to be very, very difficult. And you're going to have to effectively teach them all these things. That's not very efficient. That doesn't really lead to a kind of good long-term outcome. So I would say if you have a very specific contextual, seeking out and taking the time and maybe making mutual investments, with companies who have those experiences is really important. It's more than just having like generic quote AI experience or generic full stack experience, things like this, because you have to really understand how things fit in. And then the other thing I was saying, this is very, very important. I should have mentioned this actually a little bit earlier in terms of experiences with outsourcing outfits. But to us, building usable and highly useful and usable products is like literally the number one thing. So if that's where you're coming from, usability and being useful and things like information architecture and thinking through like user interaction, if those things are very important, then make sure you find people who have proven experience doing that, because many times you can build stuff that works on the back end, but nobody's going to adopt because the usability is just not good.
Jim, thanks for your answers. I'm sure it will be very interesting for my auditory. They will find something new, definitely. Thanks for finding time and joining me today. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Oleg. I appreciate your time, and hopefully it's useful for your audience.
If you enjoy our discussion and want to stay updated on future episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you will not miss on latest insights and conversations from the Devico Breakfast Bar. See you in a week.